So a couple weeks back, I was at the Dollar General for some reason, and I saw that they had a stand of mystery books that were all $3. I looked at the small selection that they had, and I saw that there was a book by Paul Tremblay, and I had previously read The Cabin at the End of the World and thought it was a pretty good book. So I picked up Disappearance at Devil's Rock, and it sat on my bookshelf for about a month until I ran out of books to read, and then I gave this one a chance. And it was actually a lot better than I was expecting. I was laid up in bed when I read this, and I finished it in like a day, and I've been thinking about it ever since, so now I'm going to talk about it. As a brief overview, Disappearance at Devil's Rock is about a woman named Elizabeth whose son Tommy goes missing during a sleepover at his friend's house. The book reads mostly like a standard mystery, although there have been sightings in the town of a mysterious shadow figure looking through people's windows at night. And beyond that, Elizabeth thinks Tommy may be trying to manifest himself to her, almost like a spirit, which leads to her doubting whether he's just missing or whether he's already died. If that sounds interesting to you, then I would definitely check this book out. It's a decently quick read, and I enjoyed my time with it, even if there are a couple complaints that I have with the novel. But the story and plot have been stuck in my mind, so today I'm going to break down this entire novel. I'll be explaining the mystery as it unfolds and hopefully making sense of it all. So if you're interested in understanding what really happened to Tommy Sanderson, then stick around. This will be a very fun video for you. Remember to subscribe if you haven't yet. I'm trying to reach 50,000 subs by the end of 2025. But without further ado, let's dive into the unending mystery of Paul Tremblay's Disappearance at Devil's Rock. The book starts with our main character, Elizabeth Sanderson, being woken up by a phone call. It's from her son's best friend, a boy named Josh. Josh asks Elizabeth if Tommy made it home, and Elizabeth says that she hasn't seen him and assumed he was staying the night at Josh's house, and Josh starts to sound very concerned. He says that he, Tommy, and their other friend Luis were exploring the Borderland State Park near his house when Tommy ran into the woods and they haven't seen him since. Elizabeth asks when that was, and Josh says that that was about 2 hours ago. Elizabeth can hear the tears in Josh's voice and she tries to remain calm. She tells him to call Tommy's other friends. After she hangs up on Josh, she tries to call Tommy, but it goes straight to his voicemail. She tells him to call him as soon as he can and that she's worried about him. She sends him a similar text as well. Elizabeth is fully panicking now. She's thinking about what else she can do before calling the police. And after seeing no response for Tommy, she thinks, this can't be happening again. And then she calls the police. We jump to around 2 in the morning. There are detectives at Josh's house interviewing the boys. They admit to sneaking out of the house and stealing some beer from Josh's dad. Both kids get lectures from their parents, and Josh thinks to himself that he should be the responsible one, that he shouldn't have stolen the beer, and that he shouldn't have gone to the rock. The boys map out where they went with Tommy, and the police start a search. Josh's parents send him to bed, and he asks his mom if she can stay with him for a while. She rubs his back as he lays in bed and asks him what happened out there with Tommy. Josh simply replies that he doesn't know. He really doesn't know. He thinks back to the first time that he met Tommy. They were both playing at the park when they were little, and the other parents referred to him as the boy without a father. Now, Josh wishes he could just go back in time. His mom tells him that if they don't find Tommy by morning, they'll all go out and search the state park for him together. Josh thinks to himself that he never ever wants to go back to those woods again after what happened. If it sounds like I'm withholding a lot of information from you, I am. I'm just going to present the mystery in the way the book is doing it, so then we can fill in the missing pieces at the end. We then shift to the 3 boys hanging out sometime before Tommy went missing. Luis and Josh are checking their phones and talking about Minecraft when Tommy shows up. Tommy rides his bike to them and gets off of it while it's still moving, so it continues forward until it crashes. Josh refers to this as a sort of ghost bike move. Tommy pulls out a map of the state park, and the 3 boys head into the woods to try to find the fabled Split Rock, a large boulder with a ravine down the middle of it. As the boys head into the state park and start exploring, they talk a lot about Minecraft and make really obnoxious jokes and are just generally kind of annoying, just like middle schoolers mostly are. We learn that they've all just finished 7th grade and that this is the summer before 8th grade, which puts them at around 12 years old. They eventually make it to Split Rock and decide that this will be their hideout. Josh says this rock looks like it could be a portal to the Nether, which is a Minecraft reference for all of you, I guess, boomers watching. There are actually a lot of Minecraft references in this book, and I'm not going to be talking about most of them. It feels like the author does this just to kind of reinforce how young these kids are. Tommy says that Split Rock would be a perfect place to be during the zombie apocalypse, and that they could all just hide inside the ravine. They see an old tree in the ravine which interests them. Luis asks Tommy if he's seen Dawn of the Dead, to which he says that he hasn't, and Luis says that there is a zombie in that movie that looks just like Tommy. The boys hang out at the rock until the sun starts to set and they head back for their houses. Tommy says that if there was a zombie apocalypse, no matter what, he'd make his last stand at Split Rock. We then shift back to Elizabeth's perspective. Remember, she's Tommy's mom. It's 8 in the morning after Tommy went missing, and she's meeting with a detective. Tommy has still not been found, and Detective Allison Murtaugh briefs Elizabeth on what they know. Elizabeth and Allison had previously met at a party, so they were on a first-name basis. Detective Allison says that the boys said they were hanging out at Split Rock, but Luis called it Devil's Rock, which led to some confusion because the police hadn't heard that name before. They gave the same story as they did before. They were playing at the rock, Tommy ran into the woods, they didn't see him for a while and assumed he'd gone home, and then they left the woods. They had brought a 6-pack of beer with them, and Tommy had drunk half of it, and they weren't making fun of him or doing anything that would have caused him to leave so suddenly. Detective Allison asks Elizabeth if Josh and Luis are good, honest kids, and Elizabeth says that they are. They've never lied to her, and Allison says that they will continue to search the state park for Tommy. The issue is that the state park is massive. It contains many woods and ponds and lakes, and it's nearly impossible to cover all of that ground with a simple search team. Allison asks if Tommy was showing any signs of running away, and Elizabeth insists that he wasn't. The two of them part ways, and later that night, Elizabeth's mother Janice arrives at the house. Elizabeth prays silently to herself, and she calls out to her husband William to find Tommy. We learn that William is dead, and she tells Janice that Allison thinks that Tommy ran away. Janice is completely surprised by this, and we learn that Elizabeth and William got divorced after a tumultuous marriage that ended just 2 years after Tommy's younger sister, Kate, was born. Tommy was 4 and Kate was 2, and 4 years after the divorce, William went missing. He was eventually found dead after draining his bank accounts and driving drunk. He crashed his car into a solid wall, and Elizabeth notes that his brain had swelled to 3 times its normal size before his body finally gave out and died. Elizabeth wants to go comfort Kate, who is asleep in Tommy's room, but Janice tells her that she needs to sleep and that she'll take care of Kate instead. Elizabeth agrees. She walks to her dark bedroom and sees something in the corner, and crouched between the TV and the dresser is Tommy. He's sitting with his hands wrapped around his knees, kind of scrunched up. He looks at her, and in a split second, his face changes. His features appear lumpy and misshapen, and his eyes are replaced by 2 dots. Then he disappears. All of this happened in a single split second, barely enough time for Elizabeth to register what actually happened. But after he disappears, she can still smell him. She thinks about those strange pinpricks for eyes that he had and calls out to him, but there is no response. She sits on the bed and starts to cry. She thinks she's just seen Tommy's ghost, and if she's seen his ghost, that means he has to be dead. The next chapter starts from Kate's perspective, who again is Tommy's younger sister. She's sitting in the kitchen with her headphones in while Janice and Elizabeth talk to the neighbors in the other room. Janice thanks the neighbors and asks them to leave, and Kate is happy because she's worried she would have to talk to more people. She's tired of so many I'm sorries and let us know if you need anything and all that kind of stuff. She texts Tommy and says that she misses him and that he should come home. She gets mad and then tells him that if he ran away like Dad, that he's a jerk and she hates him. Then she texts him again and apologizes and says that she just wants to hear from him and that she's worried, but she gets no response from him. Janice and Elizabeth pop their heads into the kitchen to see if Kate is listening to them. They see that she has her headphones in so she can't hear them. But Kate isn't listening to anything. She wants to eavesdrop. Elizabeth tells Janice about how she saw Tommy's ghost, and Janice isn't having any of it, and they start to argue. Kate is done hearing them arguing, so she gets up and walks down the hall to Tommy's room. She starts looking through his things and finds a notebook with his drawings in it, with the words, "School is like drowning," written on the first page. Deeper into the notebook, she finds that Tommy has drawn a whole bunch of, genitalia and other naked people. That's definitely a red flag to me, but maybe that's something that teenage boys do. It's certainly not something that I would have ever done or any of my friends have done, so let me know if that's like normal. She puts the notebook down and finds a tin containing Tommy's coin collection. There is a plastic bag with 2 coins in it that are separated from the rest of the collection. The first coin is a penny with a crack through Lincoln's head, and the second is a nickel, but all of the features on Jefferson's face have been smoothed out, along with the writing that comes on the coin normally. Above the silhouette of Jefferson's face, there is a single eye carved into the nickel. It looks like the all-seeing eye that you would find on the back of a dollar bill. Kate thinks this is strange, but she just leaves the coins. Elizabeth calls out for Kate, but Kate doesn't want to respond. She gives one last look at the room and then leaves. She keeps the door open just a crack, just in case. The next morning, Elizabeth gets up and checks her phone, and we learn that some people reported a mysterious figure cutting through their lawns and eventually entering the state park. We also learn that the sign for Split Rock has been vandalized and now it says Devil's Rock. She walks into the living room to watch some TV and she finds some papers on the ground. They are pieces of notebook paper that have been torn off at the edges. They have Tommy's handwriting on them, and Elizabeth reads them. The first page is a warning to Kate. Tommy tells her not to read his diary or he will flick her ears so hard the lobes will stretch out like bubblegum. Kid's got an imagination. The second page contains plans for his Minecraft server and how to survive the zombie apocalypse. The third page is where things get interesting. Tommy talks about how he thinks a lot about how his dad just disappeared into thin air and that he worries that he'll disappear. He says he feels like he's half gone already. He says that every time he thinks about this, he feels like it's already happening and that it's too late to do anything about it. He can't prepare against it no matter what. Elizabeth sets the pages on the kitchen table and shows them to Janice. They ask Kate if she knows anything about them, and she says that she doesn't. Kate seems upset that they would think that she put the pages there, and she says that she's never even seen what diary they could be from. She's snooped around the room before, but she's never found any diaries. The three of them are all confused and looking for a logical explanation, and we learn that Elizabeth has been keeping the back door unlocked in case Tommy came home. They speculate that someone could have put the pages there at night, maybe one of Tommy's friends. Kate says that people online are saying that there's somebody who's been creeping around and looking in their windows at night. They say he's a mysterious shadow man, at least that's what most people call him, and that he's been sneaking through yards and again looking into people's windows and walking into the state park. Elizabeth decides to keep the back door locked from now on. She tells Kate and Janice about how she saw the Tommy apparition and says that she thinks it means that he's dead. Janice refuses to listen to this and denies that Tommy is actually gone. Kate goes back to Tommy's room and picks up the bag with the weird coins. Remember the cracked penny and the nickel with the all-seeing eye on it. Elizabeth is intrigued by this. The next night, after telling Allison about the notes from Tommy, Elizabeth decides to sleep in the living room to hopefully catch whoever is leaving the notes. She wakes up at around 3 in the morning and thinks she can see a figure in her peripheral vision. It appears to be the same shadow Tommy that she saw before. She snaps her eyes over to where he should be, but he stays in her periphery. She rubs her eyes and then he's gone. She goes to check her bedroom and then she checks Kate's bedroom. Kate is asleep in her bed with Janice, and Elizabeth heads back to the living room where she finds 2 scraps of paper on the floor containing more of Tommy's notes. The first page is more zombie apocalypse fantasies, but the second contains more of Tommy's feelings about his dad. He says that he wonders if his dad will be a zombie during the apocalypse. He says that if he was, he would probably be stuck saying the last words he ever said, and Tommy wishes that he knew what those words were and that somehow that would make things better. Clearly, Tommy has a lot of bottled up emotions about his dad that he hasn't really talked about with anyone. His friends say that they intentionally don't talk about their own dads around him to not make him feel bad. He also doesn't talk about it with his mom, and Kate was really too little to form any sort of an attachment to her dad, and it seems like this diary is the only place he ever vents about these feelings. The next day, Luis and Josh's parents make them go to Elizabeth's house. They are nervous, but she welcomes them in, and Kate is not happy that they're there. She blames Luis and Josh for Tommy's disappearance and sits and listens from the kitchen. Luis and Josh tearfully apologize, and Elizabeth tells them that it's all right and that it isn't their fault. Luis and Josh then go back to Luis's house with their parents, and the adults sit and talk in the living room and tell the boys to go watch a movie in the basement. Luis wants to watch Dawn of the Dead, but Josh insists that they don't watch anything with zombies in it. Luis thinks about the zombie in Dawn of the Dead that looks like Tommy. It should also be noted that Josh really insists they don't watch anything with zombies in it, and he almost alludes to the fact that Luis would know the reason why they don't want to watch anything with zombies in it. Luis asks Josh if he knew that Tommy had a diary because Elizabeth had mentioned it to them, and Josh says that he didn't know. Luis asks if he thinks that he wrote about something, but he doesn't say what. Josh understands what Luis means, but he says that he isn't sure, and then he says, "I saw him standing outside my window again last night. That's 3 nights in a row." Luis says, "What are we going to do?" And Josh simply replies, "I don't know." The next day, Elizabeth goes to check out Split Rock, but doesn't find anything unusual. She had wondered if Tommy had fallen into the ravine, but that doesn't seem to be the case. The reason she thinks this is because the way that she saw Tommy, all kind of crouched up and hunched over, made it look like he could be trapped somewhere. She goes to a hardware store and buys a security camera that she plans on setting up in the living room to catch whoever is leaving the notes from Tommy. Kate helps her set the camera up. It's not a very good camera, so she can only view the feed through her phone, and the camera only takes pictures or records when it detects movement. Before going to bed, Kate asks Elizabeth if she thinks that Tommy is a ghost, and she says that she's afraid that she does. she goes to her own bedroom, but she hears something from the camera speaker. She asks through the camera speaker if there's anyone there, and she rushes back into the living room, but there's nothing there, and the camera didn't detect any movement. The next morning, Elizabeth is woken up by Janice, who tells her that there are new pages on the living room floor. She collects them excitedly and checks her phone for any camera footage. There was one picture that was taken automatically during the night, but the room is empty and the notes aren't on the ground. But there was also a video clip taken a few hours after that. The video shows the notes on the ground but nothing else, until Elizabeth thinks she sees a shadow in the corner of the video. She shows it to Kate, who agrees. It looks like a tall, skinny shadow that gradually disappears like somebody left the room. Elizabeth can barely make it out after watching it a few times, and then the shadow starts to disappear. She starts to think that she may have just made the shadow up in her head, and Kate and Janice tell her to read the notes. She does, and she is mortified. Janice tells her that things aren't looking good for Tommy, and Elizabeth snaps at both her and Kate before calming down, apologizing, and calling Detective Allison. She says that she needs to get over to her place immediately, and Allison arrives, and Elizabeth shows her the new notes from Tommy. The notes talk about Tommy's experience at Split Rock, drinking his first beer. He says it didn't taste very good and that Josh sneakily poured his out when he thought they weren't looking. Tommy says that he also poured out the last quarter of his beer into the ravine, but knows that Arnold saw him do it. And then he goes back to explain who Arnold is. Earlier that day, Thomas, Luis, and Josh were hanging around outside a 7-Eleven and talking about Minecraft when a man approached them and joined in on their conversation. He's kind of an odd, wiry, disheveled looking man in his mid-20s. He talks to them about his own server and he asks if they've been out to Devil's Rock, and they say that they haven't. He explains that Devil's Rock is what Split Rock used to be called, and he says that he'd like to meet them out there later that night. They agree, but they're still a little hesitant about it. This is a few weeks before Tommy went missing. The boys meet up with Arnold at the Rock, and he gives them beer, and Tommy says that he's super cool and relatable. He hangs out with them and talks about Minecraft and zombies, and he says that he wants to meet up in a couple days at Devil's Rock again. The kids agree, and Tommy is especially excited. They meet up with him a couple days later, and he gives them more beer and starts to guess things about their lives. Nothing too hard to guess, mostly just like their interests. But he tells Tommy that he can sense that he has lost someone important to him, and correctly guesses that his dad is dead. Tommy is amazed at his ability, and he asks how he could tell. Arnold says that he is a seer. He can see into people's minds and knows things about them before they've been told to him. Tommy totally believes him, but Luis and Josh are skeptical. Tommy opens up to Arnold about his dad, and he says that he's never really done that before, and it almost made him cry. He says he knows Arnold is a good guy, and that's where the note ends. Detective Allison reads the notes and then heads over to Luis's house. She meets with his parents and tells them about Arnold. She asks to talk to Luis directly, and they call him over. She asks about Arnold, and Luis sheepishly says that he knows him and they hung out like 5 times over the summer. He says that he doesn't know his last name. Allison asks why he didn't mention Arnold when they questioned him earlier, and he says that he just didn't think it was connected to the case, and Allison isn't having any of this. She says that he needs to tell her everything that he knows about Arnold, and Luis's dad gets mad at him. Obviously, he's frustrated that his kid didn't mention this before. He accuses the kids of buying drugs from him, and Luis swears they never did anything like that with Arnold. Allison tells him to calm down and asks Luis to describe the first time they went to the Rock with Arnold. Luis describes Arnold as wearing frayed, baggy clothing, having unkempt hair, and dark eyes. Definitely not the most reassuring description for a man in his 20s hanging out with kids. He tells the kids that the devil is in coincidence and that the devil is sitting below them in the ravine of Devil's Rock. He starts to tell the story about how it got that name. He says that back in the Puritan days, a man named Oakes Eastman owned a big mansion near the state park, and that he would always see the devil in the corner of his eyes. He says that you can only see the devil out of the corner of your eyes, and that the devil was hot on the heels of Oakes, so Oakes decided to trap him. He got together a group of priests, shamans, occultists, and magicians to enchant the earth in the ravine of Split Rock. Then he walks out to the rock late at night with the devil close behind him. He lured the devil to stand with 1 foot on either side of the ravine, and the devil told Oakes that he can make him powerful, stronger, or longer, if you know what I mean. I only mention that because you have to remember that this is the story that Arnold is telling to the kids, so he's the one that specifically makes the longer comment. The devil says that he can make Oakes see with his eyes, that he'll be able to know things that he shouldn't be able to know. Oakes isn't convinced, and he pushes the devil into the ravine. The devil howled all night that night, stuck in the crack of Devil's Rock. Then he stopped making noise, and Oakes lived the rest of his life, but he said that sometimes he could see someone outside of his window. Near the end of his life, he went back to Devil's Rock and saw that the devil was gone, but there was an old tree left in his place. Arnold says that if you touch the tree, you invite the devil into your life. The boys ask Arnold how he knows that story, and he says that his uncle, the Rev, told him. Presumably he's referring to his uncle being the reverend of a church. The kids meet up with Arnold again 2 days later and try to get each other to touch the devil tree. Arnold approaches them and they start talking about the zombie apocalypse. Arnold correctly guesses Luis's zombie contingency plan, which piques Tommy's interest. He asks him how he knew that, and Arnold tells him that he can see things that others can't. This calls back to what Tommy said in his most recent notes that were left in the living room, and the boys ask Arnold to prove he's a seer, and he starts to talk about Luis's dad. He says that his dad is strict and that he makes him do homework every night before he can do anything fun, and Tommy is blown away by this perceptive skill, but Luis is less convinced. Everything that Arnold has seen so far has been pretty vague and could apply to most kids. He could just be making lucky guesses, but the other boys are super into it. Arnold jokes around with the boys and he starts to adopt their middle school slang. It's all pretty uncomfortable in my opinion. He makes jokes about jerking off and sex, which is just a major red flag. And obviously a lot of middle schoolers joke around about that stuff. It's different when a man in his 20s is making jokes like that with literal children. Arnold and I are probably around the same age. I'm 26. I used to work with middle schoolers, and I cannot imagine feeling compelled to hang out with them in my free time. Any well-adjusted adult should be spending their time around other adults. Arnold is clearly written to be a creepy dude that tries to win the friendship of the kids through beer and stories. He tells the kids about his own mom, and he says that she has a meth problem and that she isn't a good parent. Then he starts to ask Tommy about his parents. This is where he correctly guesses that Tommy's dad is dead, and Tommy opens up to him about his missing dad and his conflicting feelings about him. Arnold seems understanding, and it really seems like Tommy looks up to him as some sort of father figure. Tommy says that it's weird that he's been thinking about his dad a lot lately. Arnold says that's not weird. Not weird at all. Before the kids split off from Arnold that day, he gets Tommy's Snapchat username so the two of them can keep talking in case he needs anything. While on their way home, Luis brings up that Arnold probably just guessed all of those things about them and that he can't really be a seer, but Tommy disagrees. Tommy says that Arnold is super cool and he must see something in them if he wants to hang out with a couple of middle schoolers. Luis drops the subject but still has his reservations. And Luis worries that Arnold is only guessing the bad things about their lives and that they might just be the three biggest losers in town for being so gullible and readable. We then cut to Elizabeth, who calls up a guy named Dave who she met a while ago. Dave is the editor for a local newspaper and she asks him if he can print a story about Tommy. She is worried that public interest in Tommy's disappearance seems to be waning, so she tells Dave about Arnold and he says that he'll get started on a story. Detective Allison calls Elizabeth and tells her what Luis said about Arnold. She says that Arnold and Tommy were communicating over Snapchat. Now, I personally haven't used Snapchat in like 5 years at this point, but if you don't know, it's an app where typically all of the messages you send get deleted after like 10 seconds. Allison says that they've contacted Snapchat, the company, and asked them to recover any data from Tommy's account that they possibly can, and they seem to be cooperating. This particular night, Janice has to go back to check on her cats, which leaves Elizabeth and Kate alone. They eat dinner and Elizabeth asks Kate what she thinks is happening with the notes. She says that she isn't sure, but that she's definitely not the one leaving them. Then she says she woke up the other night and thought she saw someone standing outside her window. She says that she could see a figure out of the corner of her eyes, but when she looked out the window, the figure was gone. Elizabeth asks what time this happened. Kate tells her, and they realize that it was around the same time that the camera captured the video where they could see the notes and thought they saw some shadow in the darkness. Elizabeth asks Kate to help her reboot the camera in the living room since it seems to be having some issues. Kate mentions other people have been seeing someone outside their windows as well. They reboot the camera and Elizabeth sets up an audio alarm to play from her phone when the motion sensor is triggered. Then she and Kate go to bed. Elizabeth is woken up in the middle of the night by the audio alarm on her phone. She rushes into the living room to find Kate, who asks why she's awake. Elizabeth tells her that she heard the alarm, and Kate says that she did too. Kate rushes into Elizabeth's room to check her phone and see what the camera captured. She says it didn't capture anything. Elizabeth gets her phone back from Kate, who heads back into her own bedroom. She checks the security camera app to find that her audio alarms have been disabled. She tries to check the footage that would have been captured, but it isn't there. And she knows that she didn't disable the alarm, so she goes to confront Kate about it. She finds Kate in her bed watching the feed from the security camera. Elizabeth asks her why she has that app on her phone, and Kate tries to explain herself, but she can't. So many emotions are bubbling up, so Elizabeth blows up at her. Kate has been able to turn the camera feed on and off the entire time, and she says that she must have been the one leaving the notes, and she asks where the rest of the diary is. Kate denies having Tommy's diary, and Elizabeth starts to tear her room apart, throwing drawers open and trashing everything that she can find, and Kate looks afraid. After destroying more and more of her room and finally starting to calm down, she sees Kate holding Tommy's diary, and she confesses that she was the one leaving the notes. Elizabeth asks why she would do that, and Kate says that she thought she was giving her mom hope by making her believe that maybe Tommy was still around and leaving the notes. She says that she shut down after she thought she saw Tommy's ghost, and that Kate didn't want her to believe that he was dead, and Elizabeth hugs her daughter. While she can't really understand the reasoning behind it, Elizabeth forgives Kate and apologizes for destroying her room. Then she asks to see Tommy's diary. Kate hands over the diary and confesses that she had been sneaking out to leave the pages, but that the footage with the shadow wasn't her doing. She was in bed at the time. She also says that she was planning on sharing the entire diary with Elizabeth, but that the last few pages scared her and she didn't want her to give up hope again. Elizabeth sits down to read the last page of the diary, and Kate tells her that there was a drawing that really freaks her out. I'm going to put it up on the screen. It's not graphic, but it could be a little freaky. It's really not that bad, but it unsettled me when I saw it, so if you don't want to see it, it's a zombie that Elizabeth said looks like Tommy, except his features are distorted, and it doesn't look like his usual cartoons. There's nothing funny or charming about it. But what worries Elizabeth even more is that she recognizes the drawing. It's what she saw in her bedroom, the shadow Tommy that disappeared after a couple seconds. The last pages of the diary talk more about Arnold. He and Tommy have been talking on Snapchat, and he says that Arnold is super cool and super nice. He invites Arnold to their Minecraft server and makes him promise not to touch anything because Luis and Josh would be pissed if he knew that he let someone else in. They start talking, and Arnold says that his mom was a bad person and that he thinks she's still in jail. Now he lives with his uncle, the Rev, and he says that the Rev was a seer back in the day too. Arnold used to travel from city to city with the Rev, who would do shows where he would use his seer abilities, and he is the one that taught Arnold to do it. Arnold says that he sees that Tommy can learn the seeing ability too, and that he can teach him. He says that he's been planning on moving out of his apartment soon. Tommy asks if he's going to move far away, but Arnold says that he'll stay close by, and Tommy is very relieved to hear this. Notably, Arnold's Minecraft username is Arnold Friend. The next page is the one with the creepy picture, and this is exactly what Tommy writes. Kate, I don't know what to do. This is not me. It started off as the dad drawing, but it changed, and I know it looks like me. Yeah, it does, but it wasn't supposed to. And in a weird way, it feels realer that it does look like me. I don't want to talk about it, but something awful happened, and now this looks like what I saw. I saw this, and I'm afraid I'm going to see it again. Afraid that he's going to be there all the time, in the dark corners of every room I'm in, and in the woods and behind every tree. And at night, he'll be there next to my bed, or in the closet, under the bed, in the hallway, in the bathroom, standing outside my window, watching. He'll be in my head when I close my eyes, always. I thought I could write about this, but I can't. I'm sorry. I think I saw Dad. Or I thought I saw him and saw exactly what he looked like when he died after his car accident. Like right after it happened, the mostly dead him. And I was so sure that I saw him, like so sure, but now I don't know. I think I'm wrong, or maybe not totally wrong, and I did see him, but didn't see him. And I want to take that stupid seer coin and bury it, or put it over one of my eyes like a patch, blind myself so I'll stop seeing him. I'm sorry. The next 2 pages only contain 2 sentences written in small, scratchy handwriting, those being, "Don't leave, I'm still here." Elizabeth sends pictures of the diary pages to Allison, and then a picture of the Tommy drawing to her reporter friend, Dave. The next day, Allison comes over and tells her that they are on the lookout for Arnold, but that he used a burner phone to communicate with Tommy so they can't track him. She mentions the reports of a strange man cutting through people's yards and looking into the windows at night, and asks where she found the diary. Elizabeth explains that Kate had it, and Allison understands. She notices that there are a few pages ripped out of the diary at the end that are missing. Elizabeth says she already asked Kate about those, and Kate truly has no idea where those pages might be. Allison asks Kate if she knows anything else. Kate mentions that she saw a figure outside her window and asks Elizabeth if she's told Allison about seeing the shadow Tommy, and Elizabeth sheepishly explains herself. Allison seems understanding, and Kate shows them the 2 strange coins in Tommy's room, the nickel with the eye over it and the penny with a crack through it. She asks if maybe one of those was the seer coin that Tommy mentioned wanting to bury out back. the coin he should have never touched and wants to put over his own eye to blind himself. Allison asks Kate if she has pulled the coins out of the plastic bag that they're in, and she says that she has. Allison then takes the coins and says that they'll see if they could still get a partial fingerprint off of them. Kate was planning on riding her bike to her friend Sam's house, so she takes off, and Allison and Elizabeth both search Tommy's and Kate's room for the missing pages from the diary. They search every single centimeter of both rooms, and they are unable to find the missing pages. We shift to Kate's perspective. She heads out of the house on her bike, but she isn't going to Sam's house. She first makes a stop to see if Josh is at his house. She rings the doorbell and Josh's mom answered. Kate asks to see Josh and he comes out a few moments later. Kate tells him that she wants to play basketball with him in the driveway. After playing for a few minutes, she asks Josh about the coins that Arnold gave Tommy. He says that Arnold gave all of them a coin, but that Tommy's was the one with the eye on it. We then go back to the 5th time that the boys hung out with Arnold at Devil's Rock. They were talking about Minecraft and how Arnold was playing on their server. Luis asks Arnold how he knew Tommy was playing Minecraft that night, and he says that it was just a coincidence, and Luis brings up the line, "The devil is in coincidences." Arnold asks if he's saying that he's the devil, and Josh says that he can't be because he doesn't have horns. Arnold says that he had them grinded down, and they all laugh about it. Arnold asks them if they ever think about something and then it happens. Josh thinks that the night that Arnold told him the devil story, he had a nightmare that someone was standing and watching him from outside his window. Arnold says that sometimes he feels like his thoughts can change the world around him. He can't really explain it very well, but the boys think they understand. Then he pulls out a nickel. He's filed it down and he's carving a design on it. Tommy calls it a hobo nickel because sometimes people carve their own designs on nickels for fun. It's like a real thing. He gives a nickel to Tommy for his coin collection, and they're surprised that he knows that about him. Tommy doesn't really talk about his coin collection around anybody else, so that's why they're so shocked. He gives Luis a nickel, and he says that he's still working on Josh's, but that he wants to give him something as well, and he gives him the penny with the crack through Lincoln's head. He tells Tommy that his nickel has an eye on it because he thinks Tommy is going to be a seer too. Then Luis makes a snarky comment and Arnold starts play fighting with him. He starts to shove him around and Luis gets a little scared because they're on top of the rock, and Josh thinks that Arnold is being maybe a little too rough, like he wants to show them that he is the strongest out of all of them. They all start wrestling and eventually get tired and need to head home. Arnold has Tommy try to be a seer, and he asks him how he would know that Tommy collects coins. Tommy thinks and then remembers that the first time Arnold saw them at 7-Eleven, Tommy was looking through the change that he had, and that's how Arnold knew that he collected coins. Arnold tells him that he's correct, and then Luis and Josh walk ahead of the two. Josh says he could see Arnold and Tommy looking at the seer nickel in Tommy's hand. He couldn't hear what he was saying to Tommy, but he knew that Tommy idolized Arnold, that he would follow him to the ends of the earth. We then go to later that night after Kate questioned Josh. Elizabeth knows that Kate lied to her about going to her friend's house, but she doesn't seem that mad about it. The two of them talk about what Josh says, but they haven't learned anything new about Arnold. Kate heads off to her room and Elizabeth gets a text from Janice. She sends her an article on felt presences. It's the idea that sometimes during times of intense mental stress, our minds can make us see things that aren't there. Janice thinks that this is what happened to Elizabeth, but Elizabeth still has her doubts. She knows that the shadow Tommy that she saw was real, she just can't explain it rationally. The article also talks about third man syndrome, which is something that actually happens to people. It's where you feel the presence of an extra person around you. This has actually happened a few times to people on Mount Everest. People who have summited the mountain have claimed that they can remember an extra person in their expedition crew. Again, it's a different scenario than the one that Elizabeth was in, so she's still a little skeptical about the whole idea. Then she reads an article on doppelgangers and notable instances of those. Mary Shelley, the woman who wrote Frankenstein, had a husband that had a recurring nightmare of his doppelganger confronting him and pointing to the Mediterranean Sea. A few weeks after reporting these strange nightmares, he would end up drowning while sailing a boat on that same sea. Elizabeth doesn't know what to make of this. She sits on the couch in the living room for a couple hours when she hears Kate scream. She comes running out of her room to hug her mom, and she is terrified. She says that she woke up but couldn't move, and that she felt that there was someone in the room with her. She doesn't want to go back to her room, and she wants to sleep with Elizabeth. Elizabeth notices that the security camera in the living room has been turned on and asks if Kate did it, but she says that she didn't. She has no idea how it turned on by itself. Elizabeth goes to check Kate's room and feels that there is something off in there. Then she hears a loud thud coming from Tommy's room, and she and Kate go to investigate. They find an art book on the ground. It has fallen from Tommy's bookshelf. Elizabeth recognizes it as a book that she and Allison searched through earlier in that day. She picks up the book and realigns the dust jacket, and 5 loose pages fall out of the book. They are the missing pages from Tommy's diary. Elizabeth asks Kate if she hid those pages in the art book, and Kate swears that she didn't. They're both creeped out, but Elizabeth reads the pages, and this is what they say. There's a crossed out section at the top that reads, "Dad used to play the penny game with me. Let's play penny. Take a handful of pennies and tell me guess the date. He said higher or lower until I got it. Shiny pennies are easy, the dirty ones are the hard ones. Kate, I'm sorry, don't read it, just don't." Below is the rest of what is on the note. They do contain some depictions of violence that can be unsettling to a lot of people, so be warned. Arnold picked us up and took us for a ride, and I thought we'd end up at Mickey D's. We drove around and drank beers with the windows down. Arnold driving fast and chirping tires. He drove us into Brockton, wanted to take us back to his place and show us how he made hobo nickels, and he took a bunch of turns into like a sketchy area, and Luis and Josh were making jokes from the back and flicking my ears, mad drunk. Arnold parked on a street that was crowded with triple deckers. Arnold parked in front of a gray one that looked like it was going to fall down by itself. They all stopped laughing and telling jokes when we were out of the car. No one was around, and we were the last people left on the earth, and it was the best. I wanted it to be like that, Kate, I did. Had no idea it was all wrong. Maybe I did. We walked up the driveway to the backyard. He said, "Come on." I was going to ask why we didn't park in the driveway, but I was afraid. I hate myself for always being so afraid to do or say anything. I hate it so much. "Come on." That's all he said. Come on, come on. And he went up the wooden stairs that zigzagged up to the 3rd floor. The three of us were bugging hard, I know I was, and Josh and Elise looked at me like, did we have to come here and see him make those nickels? And they looked at me like I had the answers, or maybe they were looking at me to put a stop to everything. They always looked at me like that. I'm sorry. Arnold waited for us at the top, and we walked in the back door into the kitchen, and dishes and trash everywhere, and it smelled like garbage and something else. Arnold stood in the middle of it all and said, "What a mess." Had like 100 S's on it. Then he's turned and walked into the next room, and I want to write down what we were all thinking. But I have no idea what we were thinking, and it all just happened like it happened already, and we were watching it happen again. Arnold said that he had the nickel stuff in his room, then he shouted in the other room, "Hey, come meet my friends," and no one said anything, and we looked around the kitchen not doing anything, and not knowing that we could do anything. And not knowing that we could ever do what we were going to do, I swear. And then Arnold yelled for us to come in. We did. A TV room with stained rug and food wrappers and beer bottles. So many on a coffee table and on the floor and an old TV on a small stand. And there was an old man on the couch, asleep, sitting up wearing a gross wife beater, yellow in places and almost see-through. Tight dress pants that were unbuckled on the fly down. Tighty whities ballooning out under his gut. Luis said whoa and backed up. Arnold said it was okay, he was passed out and couldn't hear us. We stood there and stared at the old man for a long time, Arnold smiling and then Arnold laughing into the back of his hand, and he looked at all of us like he couldn't believe we didn't think this was funny. He said, "What? It's just his uncle, barely even a real uncle, and I wish none of it was real." And he said, "Let's wake him." He walked to the couch and slapped his uncle pretty hard on the side of his head and shouted, "Hey, wake up, meet my friends, they want to meet Uncle Fatty." Arnold laughed and Josh and Luis laughed a little too. Maybe I did. The old man moved a little, mumbled something, and Arnold laughed like crazy, so we did too. It felt like we had to. Then Arnold grabbed Josh, still laughing, said, "Come here, your turn, go ahead, hit him. He won't even know, won't even hurt." Josh leaned back and tried to pull away, knocked over bottles everywhere, and Arnold let him go. We laughed at Josh falling down, and I'm sorry about that too. Next he told Luis to do it, just hit him. He said get mad and hit him. He said to do what I always wanted to do. And then he told him to pretend he was those jerks at the school who make fun of him for how little he is, and he went on saying the worst stuff to Luis and about Luis until Luis slapped his uncle right across the face, so hard. The smack sounded like a shot and we all flinched, and Arnold started laughing again, so hard he couldn't breathe, and then Josh came up right behind Luis without saying anything and hit his uncle in the same spot. His cheek turned red and then it was my turn, it was supposed to be my turn, and Arnold looked at me, and then I did it, I hit him. I closed my eyes to my hand into a fist and punched him in the side of the head. It hurt like punching a wall, and his eyes rolled around and closed again, and we laughed because, I don't know, we couldn't believe anything. Then we were all on him. And Arnold was shouting and asking how he liked it, and we kept hitting and laughing and hitting, and when we slowed down, Arnold told us to help get him into the shower, to wake him up. And we pulled him onto his feet. He groaned and whined a little, and we yelled at him to shut up, without Arnold telling us to, and we got him moving to the bathroom, too fast. We couldn't control him, and he fell into the tub, and Arnold squeezed by us and flipped his uncle around so he was on the floor, leaning against the tub. He said, "Wake up," and we slapped his face and punched his chest, but not as hard as we did in the living room, and we we weren't laughing anymore. And then Arnold hit him as hard as he could, grunting with each punch, and he kept punching, and the three of us stood there. We stood there and watched, and the hitting sounds made me want to puke, and Arnold wouldn't stop. Then he found an empty bottle on the bathroom floor and smashed it on the old man's head. His skin cracked open and his face covered in blood, and smashed it on the old man's head. And he coughed and moaned, didn't move his arm, and sat there. Arnold smashed 3 bottles on the sink one at a time, so the necks ended in sharp spikes. And he gave us each broken bottlenecks and told us to stick him. Go ahead, stick him, he said. It won't even hurt him. We stood there waiting for the joke to be over, and he was whispering, and then he was screaming in our faces, and we still didn't do anything, and he grabbed me first, grabbed my arm at the elbow and wrist, and we still didn't do anything. And then he was calm, and because he was calm, it was like it was okay, and he said, don't drop it, and that it was don't drop it. I thought that it was easy, that I could do it, and that I could pretend it wasn't me, and that it didn't seem like me, and I didn't stop him, and he pulled me, forced me, and the chunk of glass, it went through the old man's shirt, and I felt it sort of pop the skin on his chest, slide in, and blood filled up his shirt, and I pulled my hand away, but the glass stuck there, stayed there. Then he did the same thing with Luis and Josh, and he was like gentle and patient, and they stabbed their broken glass into the old man's gut, and Josh's went deepest. The glass tip disappeared and all the way inside. Arnold kicked his uncle in the face and stomped away into the kitchen and started yelling like crazy, and he said, come on, help me, and he shouted other stuff, and Luis and Josh ran after him like they were afraid he'd leave them there. I was by myself. I was crouched down, got closer to the old man. The cut in his forehead looked like a big crack, and his eyes were swollen shut, and his nose smushed. And I said I was sorry, and I was crying when I looked again at his uncle, and it wasn't his uncle anymore. He was my dad, and I knew it was him because I was a seer, right? And it was him right after the car accident, and he had the car window glass pushed into him, and I'd done that too. And I gently tried to pry the glass out and tell him that I'd get help, and I stood up to leave, and he moved. He hugged his legs against his chest, and looking at him made me shiver so hard my teeth chattered together. Arnold came back and said, come on. His uncle said something to me in a voice that I don't think was his. I should have said something back to him. I don't know why I didn't, and I wish I did. Arnold went into the bathroom, kicked him 3 times, and I heard it shake the whole house, then shut the door and led me out of the house and down to the stairs outside to the street, past the big wheel kid playing next to the sewer throwing in rocks and coins. So now I've been lying awake at night wondering if his uncle is okay, trying to convince myself that he'll be okay when I know he isn't, and telling myself that it wasn't our fault, that we were forced into doing it, then drifting us for us being so weak and awful. And I never thought we were so awful, and I'm sorry, Kate, that we were such cowards. We are, and we deserve whatever terrible things that will happen to us. And now that I'm writing it all down, I know that I didn't see Dad when I looked at his uncle. I'm so stupid. I saw something, I know. I did, and I keep seeing it now all the time. Look at the picture that I drew a few days ago, a few pages ago. It's not Dad. I know that now. No matter what happens to me, I have to try to do something to fix everything. I'm sorry, Kate. I love you and Mom so much, and I hope that you'll forgive me. Don't leave me. I'm still here. Kate and Elizabeth are horrified by the notes. Elizabeth says that she needs to call Detective Allison, and Kate decides to call Josh to confront him about what they just read. She asks him if it all really happened, and Josh says that it did. She asks if they killed Arnold's uncle, and he says he swears they didn't. He was still breathing when they left. Kate gets mad and asks him why they didn't tell anyone, and Josh says that Arnold was acting crazy when he drove them home. He was going 100 miles an hour and screaming. He almost drove into a tree and said he would kill them and himself, but he swerved at the last moment, and he said he knew where they lived and would kill them if they told anyone. He said that he would kill their families in the same way that they killed his uncle, and Josh says that he has been seeing him, watching him through the window at night, and Kate hangs up. Detective Allison shows up and Elizabeth gives her the last diary pages. She says she's going to question Luis and Josh again, and Elizabeth goes to drink herself to sleep. Kate stays up and leaves the house at around 2 in the morning and rides her bike to Josh's house. She sees the police cars outside the house and sneaks back to Josh's bedroom window. She texts him and he comes to the window and says that she needs to leave, that Arnold comes to look at him through the window at night, and she asks why they went to Devil's Rock for the last time. He says that it was Tommy's idea, that he wanted to do something about Arnold, something to stop him. He says that the police are there and he has to go, and he closes the window on Kate. Kate rides her bike home and slips and crashes into some dirt. She gets home and takes off her dirty clothes and then falls asleep. When she wakes up in the morning, she finds a ton of dirt and mud in the house and tries to quietly sweep it up. There is more dirt than she thought she tracked in. We then cut to Detective Allison driving with an older police officer. They have Luis and Josh in the back seat, and they're trying to find where Arnold lives. They drive to the town that Tommy said that Arnold lives in, and Luis and Josh can't see anything familiar. They haven't fully confessed everything that happened with Arnold. They drive down a different street, and Luis recognizes one of the buildings as the apartment where Arnold lives. He recognizes his car as well and starts to freak out. He starts panicking, and he says that that's the car that Arnold drove them around in. Allison asks Josh if it's the apartment, and Josh makes her promise that they have people protecting their families. He says that he's worried that Arnold will come after his parents. Allison swears that they will be protected, and Josh confirms that it's the apartment Arnold took them to. Allison calls for backup and looks up the info of the residents in Arnold's apartment. They find a man named Martin Weeks, who is 62 years old, and a 23-year-old man named Rooney Faherty. Rooney has no employer and an extensive criminal record consisting mostly of breaking and entering charges. He is currently on parole for his most recent offense. The extra police officers arrive, and they climb the wooden staircase to the apartment. They knock on the door a couple of times, and they can hear a TV inside. Eventually, a man comes to the door. It's Rooney, or as we know him, Arnold. Allison asks him why it took him so long to answer the door, and he says that he has ding-dong ditchers in his neighborhood. He says that Allison must live in a nice neighborhood, and he knows that because he can see things. He's an unkempt, drunk mess, and he looks like a total loser. Allison asks him if his uncle is inside the apartment, and Rooney looks around nervously and says that he went out with his friend. Allison says that his uncle's car is still in the driveway. Rooney says that he was picked up by a friend, and that he doesn't have a cell phone so he can't call him. Allison asks if his friend's name is Arnold. He laughs nervously and says that he has to go. Allison says she'd like to come in, and he says he's in the middle of watching a movie, Dawn of the Dead. He says that it's his friend's favorite movie, and Allison repeats that she wants to come in, and Rooney says that the police are like vampires, they have to be invited in. It's hard to express without just reading it outright to you guys, but Rooney is really off. He makes odd jokes and is always trying to make references to pop culture. It's all very strange. The police enter the apartment and Rooney apologizes for the mess. The entire apartment is covered in trash and old food, and he says that it's not right that it's such a mess. One of the officers notices a bandage on Arnold's arm and asks him what happened, and he says he was playing with some kids outside. He was chasing them, and then he fell on some barbed wire. The officer asks if he ever invites his friends over, and he says no, but then Allison says that she's sure that he had some friends over the other day, and Rooney admits to this. She asks him if he knows anyone named Arnold, and he says that that's his dad's name. She asks if Tommy Sanderson is one of his friends, and he starts to look visibly nervous. He says that he knew that she was going to ask him that he has a talent and can see things that other people can't. He says Tommy's his friend, but that he's a screw-up. He says that Tommy is always trying to get him to do bad things, that he and his friends were always pressuring him to do things that he didn't want to do. Allison asks if Tommy is here at the apartment, and Rooney says no. He says that Tommy is at the state park, that he stays there now and doesn't really talk to him anymore. The officers tell Rooney that he needs to come with them, and he moves towards his beer bottle, and Allison tells him to stop. He obeys, and another officer says that there's no one else in the apartment. But there is a door that is completely sealed with duct tape. Rooney says that he hasn't been home in a week and that he only came last night after looking for Tommy's coin. He says that he stopped by Tommy's house, but he couldn't find the coin he gave him, even after looking in Tommy's room. He says that his uncle is in the bathroom, but that he isn't feeling good. He says that his friends came over and things got out of hand. He's not quite sure what happened, but he knows that his uncle isn't doing too well and that the officers should leave him alone. The officers cut through the duct tape on the door and a horrible smell leaks out, the smell of death. They open the bathroom door and find hordes of flies buzzing around a bloated corpse. It's the corpse of Martin Weeks. His body's been decomposing for a while now. Allison notices 3 puncture marks on his dead body, all of them made from broken bottles. The police arrest Rooney and take him to the county jail. They search Tommy's room for fingerprints and see that Rooney was there the night before. Kate says that she thought the dirt on the floor was hers, but now knows that Rooney was in the house that night. The next morning, Elizabeth is driven to the police station. She is sworn by reporters but makes her way inside. She sits in a conference room, and Allison brings the transcripts of 3 different police interviews. They are the final interviews of Luis, Josh, and Rooney. Elizabeth asks Allison what Rooney is like. She wants to know why Tommy was so easily drawn to him. Allison says that he's troubled, that he seems unwell. And we are told that investigators are searching the ponds and lakes of the state park for Tommy, and and Allison leaves the room. Elizabeth reads the transcripts. If this book has sounded interesting to you at all, then I highly suggest you buy it after this video and read the final transcripts yourself. They're incredibly fascinating. My original plan was to read them to you directly like I did with Tommy's note, but that would probably add on like another 30 to 45 minutes, so I'm just going to summarize what they say. Allison asks Josh why Arnold was at the state park the night of the disappearance, and he says it was because Tommy invited him, and he said they needed to fix it. Arnold then tells us that the boys insisted on going to his apartment, that he didn't want to do it, but they pushed him into it. He says that it'll be really hard to talk about what happened. Josh says that everything Tommy wrote about was true. They beat up and stabbed Martin, but they didn't think they killed him. Allison confirms that Martin is dead, and Josh goes pale. Louise says that they were drunk and that they knew that Martin was in bad shape after Arnold had kicked him in the head over and over again. He says that they didn't think he could die. Arnold drove them home and threatened to kill them and their families if they told anyone. Josh saw Arnold outside his window that night, and the next day, the three boys met up again. Tommy said that he had a plan, that they needed to fix it, that they needed to take care of Arnold themselves. That's when they invited him to Devil's Rock one last time. Allison asked Arnold if he hit Martin first, and Arnold asked if they're going to talk about Tommy. He says they should talk about him, that he still doesn't know why he wanted to hurt him. Louise says that they had a sleepover at Josh's house because it's the closest to the state park. Their plan was to get Arnold drunk and push him into the ravine at Split Rock. Josh says that they didn't even think they were going to kill him. Their minds hadn't gotten that far. They just knew they had to stop him. They didn't even think they were capable of killing someone. He said that they had to stop Arnold, that he went to his house and stared at him through the window, that if they didn't stop him, he would kill them and their families. Louise says that Tommy was insistent, that he had already invited Arnold to the rock before they even talked about it. He says that it felt like Tommy knew something that he wasn't telling them. Arnold repeats his same story. He says the boys insisted on going to his apartment and that they stole his uncle's beer and laughed and beat his uncle to a pulp while he stood there frozen. Josh says that they stole a bunch of beer from his dad. They needed a lot to get Arnold drunk. He says that he and Louise never saw Arnold that night, though. He wasn't lying about that. Arnold says that he watched in horror as the kids killed his uncle. He says he didn't do anything to him and that he just watched. He repeats that he is a seer and that he can see things that others can't. He says that all of the other times that he has been arrested have been misunderstandings. He doesn't steal from people, he just breaks into their houses to exist somewhere else. He says that the boys killed Martin on the couch, and Allison asks why he ended up in the bathroom, and Arnold says that he must have walked over there afterwards. Allison says that there was no blood on the carpet between the couch and the bathroom, and Arnold says that he shouldn't be here. He should have never left his cave. Louise says that Tommy brought a knife with him that night. He said that they would use it as a last resort, but the plan was to trick Arnold into falling into the ravine. Arnold says that he went to the state park that night to convince the boys to get the help that they need. He says that he stayed with his uncle during the day. Allison asks why he didn't call for help, and he says that the police wouldn't have believed him on account of all of his prior arrests. She asks him who taped up the door to the bathroom, and he says that he doesn't know, that maybe the boys came back during the week that he was at the state park. He says that after Tommy hurt him, he walked around the north end of the state park. He says there's a viaduct there, the same one that Tommy's dad crashed into. He says that no one knows the trails back there by the old quarry and that the rocks opened up like a flower, and he stayed in the caves for the next week. Louise and Josh say that Tommy talked to them about zombies while they waited for Arnold. Louise can't explain why, but he thinks that Tommy already knew that he would go running off alone. Tommy told Louise about the zombie you, the version of him that was empty and did terrible things. He said that he thought the zombie versions of them were the ones that hurt Martin. Josh says that Tommy called out Arnold's name and he pointed to the middle of the woods and said that he saw something. Josh said that he didn't see anything then, but that he thinks he did a little later. Louise said that Tommy ran into the woods after what he saw. They couldn't see him anymore, but they heard a painful moaning sound coming from the woods. It sounded just like Tommy. Then the moaning turned into full-on screaming, and Louise was terrified. The screaming stopped, and Tommy stumbled out of the woods and asked them if they saw it and ran off again. Josh says that he saw something run past them before Tommy stumbled out of the woods, but he swears it was Tommy. He couldn't see his face, but it looked and moved just like him. When Tommy came stumbling out of the woods, Josh told him that he thought he saw him just a second ago running past him, and Tommy looked worried and started saying things under his breath. Louise says that Tommy got right in his face and asked him if he saw it. Tommy says that he saw himself running into the woods and that there was something over his eyes. He asked how he could have seen himself, and Tommy started groaning and crying. He said that it looked dead. Arnold says that he was walking through the state park and heard groaning and yelling all around him, like the voices of an army surrounding him, and that he was scared. Luis says that Tommy told him he was going to run into the woods again and that neither of the two boys were to follow him. He needed to do this on his own. He says that he and Josh tried to convince him to go home and that Tommy said that he was a real seer now and started to laugh. He said, of course it had to happen like this. Luis said that Tommy didn't have his knife, but Arnold says that Tommy came running and screaming at him in the woods with his knife raised above his head. Josh and Luis say they looked around for Tommy until their phones died, and then they went back to Josh's house, hoping that Tommy made his way home and was just pranking them. Arnold says that he and Tommy were chasing each other through the woods, that they kept switching who was chasing who, and that they knew where to go because they were both seers. He says that they ran into a pond and Tommy started swimming to a small island, and Arnold thought that he was leading him into a trap because he isn't a great swimmer. Josh says that they walked back through the forest and called out for Tommy, and they thought they could hear someone nearby, but that he didn't see Tommy, at least he thinks he didn't. He says that for a split second, he thought he saw Tommy scrunched up on the ground, sitting with his arms wrapped around his legs. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Luis says that Josh kept talking like Tommy was still there, that he kept saying, "Why would you do that? Why would you leave us? Don't leave, we're still here." Arnold says that he chased Tommy to the island and Tommy jumped out and slashed his arm with the knife. He says that he could hear Tommy and the other boys laughing at him. Then he picked up a rock and hit Tommy hard in the head. Tommy dropped the knife and sat down. Arnold says that Tommy was like a brother to him and that he told him that. He says that Tommy must have been really mad at him because he wasn't saying anything back to him. He was completely silent. He says that Tommy got up and walked to the center of the island. There were 3 boulders there in a formation, and Tommy crawled and sat in the middle of them. Arnold then left and wandered through the forest. He says that he found a cave and that he thought the cave would be a terrible place, but it ended up being nice and that he lived there for a week. Josh and Luis went home, and the next night, Josh saw Arnold at his window. That was enough for him and Luis to keep quiet about the whole thing. They were freaked out. Arnold stayed in his cave during the day that week, but would go out at night and walk the state park. He says that he would sometimes go to other places too, though. He says that the state park was like a shared bedroom between him and Tommy, and that he wanted to talk to Tommy and explain himself. He wanted to bring him a gift. He thought that if he brought him the hobo nickel he gave him, it would be a peace offering. He says that he went to look for it at Tommy's house, but he couldn't find it, so he brought 2 pennies instead. He says that it's the thought that counts, and that Tommy was still mad at him when he gave him the pennies. He was giving him the silent treatment. He left the pennies with Tommy. The last thing he says in the interview is that they shouldn't worry about Tommy. He was like his brother and he knows him. He says that Tommy will come home when he wants to. Elizabeth finishes reading the transcripts and Allison comes back into the room. Elizabeth is devastated, of course, and she asks Allison if the boys were telling the truth about seeing Tommy. Allison says that she doesn't know, and Elizabeth says that she believes them. She believes they saw Tommy in the woods that night, even if she can't explain it logically. She asks Allison if Tommy had pennies in his eyes when they found him. Allison seems shocked that she knows this, and Elizabeth explains how she knows. She says that after Tommy disappeared, she thought she saw him in her room. He was sitting with his arms over his legs, and he looked up at her and his features were bloated and lumpy. She says that his eyes were different though, they were little pinpricks. She says that he had pennies over his eyes. She saw him with the pennies over his eyes. She saw him the way that he would be found by the police. She says that Tommy must have seen himself too. He saw his own dead body. That's what he drew in the diary. That's what the zombie Tommy actually was. It was his own dead body. Elizabeth goes to the coroner to see her son's dead body after they find him, even though she's seen the pictures already. She sees the pennies pressed into his eyes by Arnold. She's told that the pennies were left there post-mortem, as if that makes it any better, and although the sight of her son's corpse is devastating, it's something she's seen before. She goes home and finds Kate and Janice waiting for her. They hug each other, and they're all already crying. We skip forward a few months. The trial is in progress for Arnold, or Rooney. We learn that he used to break into houses, but he never stole anything. He would just watch people sleep. His uncle was a traveling preacher who talked all about hellfire and damnation and all of that scary stuff, and it may have contributed to Rooney's untreated mental illness. Elizabeth says that Rooney isn't a monster. He's still just a kid. We learn that she and Kate are just about to move out of the house and that they are cleaning out Tommy's room. They are both in therapy and seem to be coping with the loss of Tommy as well as they possibly can. They have everything packed up and in the truck, and they want to say their final goodbyes. Kate brings in a couple scraps of blank paper from Tommy's old notebook and says that she wants to leave them on the ground in his room as a reminder. She says that it's symbolic, that they used to find the pages that Tommy had written in, but now that he and they are at peace, she will leave the blank papers there to represent that piece. Elizabeth thinks this is a little silly but doesn't say anything. They leave the pages and leave the house. Elizabeth says that she needs to go to the bathroom one more time, and she runs back inside. She goes back to Tommy's room and sees the pages on the floor. She refers to it as special paper and sees that they are no longer blank. There is writing bleeding through the paper in black ink. She wants to read them, but she thinks that she already knows what they will say. She thinks that she could spread them at their new apartment and that it could be like Tommy's following them there. She thinks that she could also never read the pages, that she might not want to know what they contain. Elizabeth unfolds the pages and starts reading, and that's the end of the book. So what actually happened here? I've got a few theories, but let's go back and really quickly just summarize the events of the story in chronological order so we can make sense of a few things. The earliest significant event in this story is Tommy and Kate's dad's death. He and Elizabeth got divorced when Tommy was 4 and Kate was 2. Then he went missing and eventually crashed his car into the viaduct that sits on the north end of the state park. He was driving drunk and died shortly after the crash. Around this time, a kid named Rooney is abandoned by his dad and his mom starts to have a drug addiction issue. He is sent to live with his uncle, Martin. Martin takes Rooney around to his spiritual revival shows, and Rooney starts to believe that he is a seer and that he has other special abilities. As he grows up, Rooney starts to break into houses and watch people sleep. This leads to him going to prison a number of times and being forced to live with his uncle while on parole. Josh, Louise, and Tommy are all best friends at this point, and they hang out a lot the summer before 8th grade. They meet a man who calls himself Arnold at the 7-Eleven who wants to show them Split Rock. The kids spend the next few weeks hanging out at the Rock with Arnold. They drink beer and Arnold tells them that he is a seer and he gives them the hobo nickels. Arnold starts mentoring Tommy on how to be a seer and Tommy draws the picture of his future corpse. This may not have happened in this particular order, but we'll go over that later. Arnold takes the kids back to his apartment where he makes them beat up and stab his uncle until he dies. He drives the boys home and threatens them if they tell anyone what happened. Tommy decides they need to take care of Arnold, and the boys arrange to meet him at the Rock. Arnold doesn't show up at first, and Tommy runs into the woods to fight his own doppelganger. Tommy runs back into the woods after seeing himself and ends up chasing Arnold through a pond onto an island. He stabs Arnold in the arm, and Arnold hits him in the head with a rock, killing him. Now, it's up in the air whether Arnold actually killed him at that moment, but we know Tommy's body ends up in between 3 rocks, and Arnold says that he walked there, but Arnold could have very well just placed him there and not been telling the truth. Arnold stays in the state park for the next week, living in the caves. Tommy is reported missing, and Elizabeth sees the ghost of his corpse in her bedroom. Kate discovers the diary, and Kate tricks her mom by putting the papers out in the living room at night. She eventually confesses, and they find the final Tommy diary pages in his room suddenly. Arnold sneaks into Tommy's room to find the hobo nickels, but can only find some pennies. He goes back to Tommy's corpse and places the pennies over his eyes. He goes back to his uncle's apartment, seals the door to the bathroom, and is soon approached by the police who arrest him and draw a confession out of him. Tommy's body is found, and we learn that the vision that Elizabeth saw in her bedroom was Tommy's dead body, and we also learn that there may have been a second Tommy at the state park. Arnold is put on trial and convicted of killing Tommy. Kate and Elizabeth leave their old house, but not before leaving some blank paper in Tommy's bedroom. Elizabeth sneaks back into the bedroom and sees that Tommy has written something on the paper. Presumably his spirit is still in the house, and that's where the story ends. So the first key to understanding this story is acknowledging that there is definitely something paranormal going on here. This is confirmed by the final notes from Tommy. I believe that Tommy's ghost is still in his bedroom, and that is how he wrote on the blank pieces of paper. Elizabeth says that she thinks that she knows what's written on the paper. Throughout all of Tommy's diary notes, one line keeps showing up near the end that says, "Don't leave, I'm still here." I think these lines were written after Tommy died. He was kind of calling out to them by writing these things in his diary, because those lines were always found on a separate page away from like the big long notes that he wrote before he died. I don't think Arnold was actually a seer, but I think Tommy might have been. He says in his notes that things went wrong after he used the seer coin, and I think that's when he first saw his own corpse. He was haunted by the reflection of what he would eventually be and attempts to chase after it the night that he was killed by Arnold. We hear Tommy groaning and screaming in the woods. I think that this groaning and screaming is the original Tommy seeing himself and just being completely freaked out. Josh later sees the same vision of Tommy's corpse and tries to talk to it, but it doesn't respond. Tommy is killed by Arnold, but comes back as a spirit that is trying to reach out to his family and explain what happened. He wants to tell them he is around and that he is still here. He is eventually able to show them the final diary notes that explain what happened with Arnold and how they killed Martin. I think that is all true. Nothing paranormal happened with Arnold. At the end of the story, Tommy is still inside his house, presumably inside the dark closet that Elizabeth takes note of. He writes another message for her on the blank piece of paper, which, like I said, is, "Don't leave, I'm still here." Now, obviously, the biggest question is, How did Tommy see his own dead body? And I think that's supposed to be left up in the air. We don't know exactly what he saw, but he saw it. Tommy's death was caused by Arnold, like Arnold was the one who hit him in the head with a rock, killing him. But Tommy was also being haunted by something else before he died. I originally thought that this book was going to end up dismissing all of the paranormal aspects and just have it be a completely plausible story of a creepy dude killing a lonely kid. This book definitely wants you to think that Arnold might be like a demon or the devil himself. Arnold Friend is from a famous short story by Joyce Carol Oates called Where Are You Going? Where Have You Been? That story has a character named Arnold Friend that is implied to be somewhat demonic or devilish and very creepy, but our Arnold ends up being nothing more than a man. I think it's a little odd that so many of the paranormal aspects of this story are dismissed, but then it ends up with Tommy seeing his own ghost and then like literally haunting his own bedroom. I kind of wish the story would commit either way to like the paranormal aspects. It feels undercooked the way that it comes out, but that's just my opinion though. I think the strengths of this story are definitely the creepy moments with Arnold. He is written in Tommy's notes like he's a really cool, fun guy that Tommy can look up to. But then we find out that he's a creepy, weird, lonely loser, and it feels like the worst is about to happen. We can see that he is exactly what we thought he was and not what Tommy sees him as. I think that the mystery is handled really well and that all of the smaller reveals feel satisfying. As soon as Arnold is introduced, we know exactly where the story is headed, but it still subverts some of our expectations. Specifically, the bit about the kids being pressured into killing Martin. That scene is so horrifying and just incredibly hard to read. You can feel how helpless the kids are to Arnold's manipulation. That also gives us a really strong reason as to why Luis and Josh wouldn't just come out and say something about Arnold. They were legitimately fearful for their lives. My biggest gripe with the novel is that the characters don't feel super fleshed out. I was much more interested in the mystery and the characters didn't really connect with me at all. But I also have another pretty big gripe with this novel that I need to talk about. It's what this video was originally going to be about before I decided to go over like the entire novel. We need to talk about Lake Mungo. I have mentioned Lake Mungo a couple of times before. It's an Australian mockumentary horror movie that is one of the creepiest movies that I have ever seen. I'm going to have to spoil that entire movie, so if you haven't seen it and still want to watch it, then go and do that. If you've already seen it or don't care about spoilers, then keep watching. The entire time I was reading Disappearance at Devil's Rock, I had this creeping sense of familiarity. It felt like I had read this before. And that's because it has a lot of similarities with Lake Mungo. So many similarities that I started to feel a little uncomfortable near the end. I assume that the author, Paul Tremblay, must have been influenced by that movie. I almost wonder if he wanted to write a novelization of it, but couldn't get the rights, and that's why he wrote this. Let's go through all of these similarities. We have someone that goes missing or dies near a lake. We have that person's sibling faking a paranormal event to push their mother into action. In Lake Mungo, it's the fake photographs of Alice's ghost made by her brother, and in Devil's Rock, it's the notes left by Kate for her mother to find. We have a moment where we discover that there was another unwelcome adult presence in the victim's life. In Devil's Rock, it's Arnold. In Lake Mungo, it's the neighbor that was grooming Alice. Both Alice and Tommy see visions of their own future corpses and are haunted by them. Both stories end with the family being ready to move on before we discover something paranormal really was going on the whole time. In Lake Mungo, it's the creepiest ending credit sequence ever, where we see the footage and images of Alice's actual ghost. In Devil's Rock, it's the notes that a ghostly Tommy writes on at the end. Now, obviously, there are a lot of differences between the stories as well. Lake Mungo starts with Alice being dead, whereas Devil Rock is about a disappearance and the search for Tommy. There's also a much greater presence of the police in Devil's Rock. It follows their investigation and ends with them finding the body, rather than Lake Mungo ending with the family moving on. Also, at the end of Lake Mungo, the family is wholly unaware of Alice's continued presence in the house, whereas Elizabeth knows that Tommy is still there even if Kate doesn't. So it's not a one-to-one, but it's a little too close to comfort for me personally. I still enjoyed my time with this book and would recommend it to most people, but I can't ignore those similarities. I also think that my personal threshold for how much inspiration I can handle in a book or movie is pretty low. Most people seem to think that Devil's Rock is more of an homage to Lake Mungo, but I also love Lake Mungo, so it just makes me like Disappearance at Devil's Rock as well. There's something very eerie about the idea of seeing your own dead body. Tommy gets a premonition of what he will end up being and seemingly finds that in the woods the night that he dies. that is horrifying and creates so many interesting questions. I don't think the story is unsatisfying. I think it's a little messy in places, but that it wants to be messy. It puts you in the mind of someone looking for their missing child. Your brain bounces back and forth between dozens of different theories, and you think you have it figured out only to find another piece of evidence that contradicts those theories. I bought Disappearance at Devil's Rock for $3 at a Dollar General, and I can say that I easily got my money's worth. It's a fun, creepy ride that kept me guessing the entire time. And even if I didn't like absolutely love this book, I can definitely say that it is stuck in my head since I finished it. That's the reason I'm making this long video about it. I can't get it out of my head. And this video probably reflects those messy, unorganized thoughts that I've been dealing with since finishing the novel. I don't quite know what to make of it. Is Tommy actually a seer, or does he just think he's one? Did he really see his dead body, or is that some sort of shared delusion? Is he really still haunting his bedroom, or Elizabeth just seeing what she wants to see? Those questions will stick in my mind long after I've finished making this video, so while this may not be the best book I've ever read, or even the best book I've read this year, it's certainly one of the most thought-provoking books that has certainly stayed in my mind. And that has to count for something. Thank you all so much for watching. I wasn't planning on making this video, but I just kept thinking about the book, and I knew that I had to get my thoughts on it out there. If you've read Disappearance at Devil's Rock, then please let me know what you thought about it. If you also saw the Lake Mungo connections, then I'd love to hear about that. If you think I'm crazy, then you're right, but I'd also love to hear why you think that. If you have a suggestion as well for what I should cover next, then please let me know in the comments below. Remember to subscribe if you haven't yet. I'm trying to hit 50,000 subs by the end of 2025, and I could use all the help that I can get. I talk about internet horror and horror literature in general on this channel. If you want to support me further, then please consider becoming a channel member, where you will get early access to all my videos, access to exclusive book review videos, and access to my members only book club. A massive thank you as always to all my gold tier members: Amanda Mapes, Lucas Fernando, Chris Lamb, Ezra, Silent Trails, Blue Radio Media, Tyler the Leper, Vic's Corner, Miss Joy 16, Coco Boko, Cherry Shark, Saddest John, Moonsong Blog, Starlight Pink, Jackson Moore, Amanda Castillon, Lexi, Arcade Link Author, Pyrocat B, The Official Gar, Passion the Fruit, YBAB Flow, Hi, and Zapodapos. Your continued support means the world to me. This month has been my most successful month yet as a YouTuber. I had a week where I was just getting so much love from the algorithm, and things are starting to slow down a little bit again, but I certainly have it. I've got a lot of cool videos on the horizon. But if you can't tell already, my voice is like almost gone because this video has been like a 2-hour recording. I need to go edit all of this stuff to get it out for you guys. Thank you guys all so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.